Hello, my name is Eddie and today I am going to take you through a little training session of SMSTurbo Fulcrum. This is what Fulcrum will look like when you first log in. From here, there are two sections that I want to make note of. On the left here, you will see the panel that houses all of the maintenance data. Vehicles or your trucks, customers, products, etc. will all be found in this pane. Additionally, this is where you will navigate to the Create Ticket screen and view your ticket list. The other section of Fulcrum can be found in the top right section here. This is where you will find an assortment of default reports. If there is a report that you would like us to add to Fulcrum specific to you, or make any changes to any reports, please contact sales and we can move it through the pipeline. Additionally, you will find your accounting export or QuickBooks Online interface in this top section, followed by an expansive help document that details anything in the application that you would like further information on. Furthermore, I could click my initials in the top right corner, MG, and see a couple of other options. Here you will find your settings, where to change your password, as well as some useful system management tools. This right side section will be covered in an additional training later on. At this point, I would like to turn our attention back to the left side of the screen, as that is where we will focus for most of this training. To successfully create a ticket, we will need a few things. A vehicle, customer, price sheet, tax code, and product will all be required to complete a ticket. If you do not use taxes, however, you can just create a tax code of 0%, which we will touch on later. To create a vehicle, navigate to the Vehicles section on the left pane. From here, click on Create New in the bottom right of the screen. There are quite a few fields here, and we can touch on each one of them individually. The description field is what you will use to pull this specific vehicle onto a ticket, so make sure it is something you will remember. You can type anything you want into this description field, as Fulcrum will automatically set an ID in the background for everything in the system. That means, if you don't like a name of the truck a few months down the line, you can change it at any time. For now, I am just going to call it Test Truck 123. The external ID is an additional field that can be used if you have a development team that wants to use our API to push and pull data. Nothing necessarily has to be filled into this field, but it is there if you need it. If we use this test truck on a ticket, we will never be able to delete it, because it is tied to a ticket already. However, we can use the inactive switch for this case. If we set this truck to inactive, we will not be able to use it on tickets anymore, and it will not show up in the list of available vehicles to choose from, but it will still be in the system. Maintaining data integrity. The Add to All Sites switch really applies if you have multiple sites in Fulcrum. If you do, this switch will automatically add any new trucks to every site you currently have in the system. You will see the same top row of fields on every piece of data that we enter into the system today. Moving down, we have the Customer field. If you want the customer to automatically populate the ticket when you enter the truck, you can fill this field out, and it will default for you while creating the ticket. However, this does not mean that you cannot change that customer while creating the ticket if you need to. It simply exists to give you a default if you want it. The vehicle type can be populated by the vehicle type list. This categorizes the truck into a specific vehicle type, and is mainly used for when we want to attach freight sheets and hauling charges to tickets. The trailer drop-down has a few options. If you set it to none, it will allow you to enter a trailer on the ticket, but will not blatantly ask you for it. Setting it to required will force you to enter a trailer on the ticket before it can successfully close. The prompt option will simply ask you if you would like to add a trailer to that ticket or not. Registration is another reporting field that is mostly used with our other customers for taking down the license plate of a vehicle. This field does not show on any reports or anything unless you contact sales and ask them for that addition. Unit of measure here should be whatever your scale reports weights in. 99% of the time scale report in pounds, in increments of 20. If for some reason your scale reports in tons, you can set this to tons. Maximum weight and tare weight are fairly self-explanatory. If you enter a max weight, you will get a warning on the ticket if you are going over the maximum weight of the truck. The tare weight here will auto-populate the ticket when you pull the truck into the ticket. And the scale drop-down here simply allows you to pull the tare weight off of the scale and onto the truck record, rather than manually typing it in. We will see this again when we get to ticketing. Tare expiration timeframe and start date do exactly what they say. If you set the tare start date to January 1st, and you choose day of week as the time frame, it will ask you to re-tare the track every single week. The same goes for day of month and day of year. Kiosk code only matters if you have purchased the K4 kiosks with Fulcrum. At this point, I have created my new truck in Fulcrum, so I can go ahead and hit save. Here we can see my truck in the truck list, and once you have more trucks in here, you will be able to see all of them. Moving on now to the customer section, you will see a very similar layout at the top of the screen with the description, external ID, inactive switch, and add to all sites switch. Fill those out as normal. Let's call this customer a test customer. Moving down the field list here, we have price sheet. Here is where you can attach a price level or discount level to this specific customer and have it automatically populate on the ticket. Again, this is not necessary to fill out, but if this customer always gets the same pricing, it saves your scale operator a step of having to enter it manually. The tax code on the customer is interesting as well. When we get to creating the price sheets, you will notice that we must add a tax code to each price sheet detail line. However, the tax code on the customer level will override whatever comes through the price sheet. This will make more sense later on. Below this section is the address sections. These top 6 fields here will show up on the ticket printout by default, while the bottom 6 fields will not. We also have fields for phone, mobile, and fax which will not show on the ticket printout by default. If we input an email into this email box, I will put my email in here, and then we check off email tickets. It will send a PDF copy of each ticket created with this customer to the email listed in the box. Additionally, we can add more emails if we want to, simply by separating them out by a semicolon. We can default the ticket printout for this customer if they specifically have a different ticket printout than the rest of our customers, and we can also default the number of ticket copies that get printed out each time we do a ticket with this customer. If we leave this value at 0, it will simply use whatever the default is set to on the printer. We can also set a minimum escrow balance for this customer if escrow is something that you already use. The 3 switches at the bottom here are very important. Require payment for tickets will not allow you to close a ticket for this customer until that ticket is marked as paid. This can be used for your cash customers that are required to pay before leaving the facility. Print pricing is fairly self-explanatory. If we want the customer to see the pricing when the ticket is printed out, you can check this box off. Otherwise, leave it unchecked. Tax exempt will simply not charge any tax to the customer if it is set to on. Now, let's go ahead and save our customer. Moving to the product section now, let's create our product. We will call it Sand. As you can see here, there are not many fields on the product screen. You can select a product class from your list of classes if this is something that you have set up. Product class will allow you to categorize a group of products together. For instance, if I have 8 different types of sand, I can create a product class called Sand and assign that class to all of my sand product. Additionally, we will set the direction of this product, inbound or outbound. This direction is simply a default and can be changed from the ticket screen at any time. Now we can save our product. At this point, I will actually create another product so we can test with multiple. Let's call it stone. As I mentioned earlier, we have to assign a tax code to every single ticket, even if you do not charge any tax at your facility, so we will have to go ahead and make a tax code. We will call this tax code test tax 5%. I can add the tax line of 5% here. Now we move to the fun part of the setup, the price sheet. Let's go ahead and create a new price sheet. As I mentioned earlier, you want to think of the price sheets like different price levels. Sometimes you will have them set up for customer discounts, sometimes you will create them for your sales orders, and sometimes you will just have one list of prices for all your products. In this case, let's call this price sheet base price. From here, I will click Add All Products as I would like to add all of my products onto this price sheet. I will select the unit of measure for all of my products as tons, but don't worry, this can be changed later if we have some products sold by the yard, or by the each for example. I will also select my tax code that we created earlier. Hitting Select adds all of my products to the price sheet, with a unit of measure of ton and a tax code of test tax 5%. If we expand one of these products, we have quite a few options. I currently have the rates in the system set up with just a unit price and a delivery price for this specific product, but you can have up to 5 different rates in the system. I only have 2 in this case. At the top of this product, we can see the information that we already filled out, with the product name, the unit of measure, and the tax code. The first box below that will be the dollar value for our first rate or unit price. Let's say that our sand is $20 per ton in this case. The drop-down to the right lets us know how we will be entering the amount of material on the ticket. If we use UOM, the ticket will be expecting a weight. If we use quantity, the system will be expecting us to type in a quantity. For example, we will type in 5 tons. And flat will simply add a flat charge of $20 whenever we use this product and rate. Let's leave it at UOM, as we want to charge by the weights coming from the scale. In Fulcrum, we have the option to add a minimum quantity to the material, as well as a minimum dollar total. I will leave these both at 0 for now, but if any of your materials have a minimum, you could set that up here as well. The last switch here for taxable will allow me to toggle on and off taxable for this specific rate on this price sheet. For our delivery, let's go ahead and set it to be a flat charge of $50 whenever we deliver this product of sand. With our price sheet created, we can now create our first ticket. Let's move over to the Create Ticket section of Fulcrum. The first thing we need to do is add a vehicle to the ticket. I will do that by searching for my test truck 123 in the Vehicle section. I can click on that truck, and it will add it to the ticket. Alternatively, if I am not sure the name of my truck, I can type a % symbol into the box, and it will show me every truck in the system. That goes the same for any of the fields on this ticketing screen. After I add my truck, I need to pull in my test customer that we created earlier. After that, I will need to pull in my price sheet, so Fulcrum knows which set of materials and prices to allow me to choose from. At this point, I can either add the product from the top blue button here, or I can click the box below to add a product. If I click the product drop-down, it will show me every product coming from the price sheet. Additionally, I can also just start typing to filter down my list of products here. Let's pick our sand product. Notice the direction gets set to outbound. Before I enter my weights, I would like to bring attention to the Rates tab at the top of the product screen. From here, I can see exactly how much the product will be charged for, the tax code, and for what unit of measure. This information is coming directly from the price sheet. Back to the product screen, I can now go ahead and enter my weight. When we have a scale hooked up to the system, I can just use the buttons here to click and pull the weight from the scale, but currently we do not, so I will just type in some weight. At this point, you can see the net weight in pounds, as well as the converted net in tons. Now I can save our product. At this point, I have a few options. If we are going to be invoicing this ticket, I can go ahead and just save the ticket with one of the 3 save options at the bottom of the screen. However, if I want to pay this ticket, I can navigate to the pay screen with the button at the top right. Here we see exactly how this ticket is being charged, and how the total amount is being calculated. At the bottom of the screen, I can see the payment amount defaulting to the total amount on the ticket. I can select my payment type, in this case cash, and hit Add Payment. Here we see it added the payment line for the full amount on the ticket. Now I can hit Save and Continue. Now that we have a payment on this ticket, we can go ahead and save it. Since this ticket has a gross, a tare and a net, the ticket will successfully be closed. Typically at this point, the system will ask me if I would like to print this ticket, but we do not have a printer hooked up to your database just yet, so it will just save and close the ticket. Oh no! I accidentally put the wrong gross weight onto the material on that ticket. Now I am going to have to void and remake the ticket, because it is closed and I can't change it. Luckily, in Fulcrum, voiding and recreating tickets is very easy, now that we have built in a recreate feature. I can void this ticket, and input a reason for the void incorrect weight. At this point, I can then hit the recreate button, and it will pull all of the data from the old ticket into a new ticket while allowing me to change whatever I want. I can now go ahead and update the gross weight for that product, and resave the ticket. At this point, I want to show you how we can get a lot of the information to auto-populate the tickets through the use of defaults on maintenance records. To do this, I can go into my vehicle that we created and attach a customer to it. Next, I can go into our customer that we created and attach a price sheet. Going back to our Create Ticket screen now, I can input simply the vehicle, and it will pull the customer in because we attached it to the vehicle. Since the customer also has a price sheet attached, it will automatically pull the price sheet in as well. At that point, all we would have to do is add our material and save the ticket. The main point of that demonstration is that you can default as much or as little as you wish as far as ticket information goes. There have been many customers that don't default anything, and there have also been customers that default as much as they can for the scale operators, so there is less to worry about. The choice is yours. At this point, that is all I have to show you for the basics of creating data and making tickets in Fulcrum. Thank you for listening and have a great day.